For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Carter Brady. How's it going today, Carter?
How's it going, Tom? Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm excited to sit down and chat with you a little bit and get to learn more about you and what you got going on. I know you just dropped a music video. What was it, the 11th, I believe? So,
yeah.
Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah, Tuesday. So I'm really excited to talk about that. And then, of course, the project that it came off of. But first, before we kind of jump into all that stuff, let's take a step back and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. What's your background story? What got you started in music? You know, like real comic book origin story stuff.
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, first and foremost, I guess what got me into music was I have to, thank my parents for that, just because from a very early age, so they actually grew up, being musicians. They're in families with musicians, and my dad plays guitar. Grew up playing in bands. My mom played French horn, and so it was always a big part of their life. And I think they just saw, I'm the oldest of three younger siblings, and so when I was in first grade, I think it was the end of the first grade, my mom reached out to our elementary school music teacher and asked if he would be willing to teach me guitar. And so ever since then, I'd just been taking lessons with him for about 3 years, and then eventually switched to a different teacher. This guy that had never taught anybody guitar before. He was from England. This guy, Mark Sidgwick, still keep in touch with him. And my mom was like, asking him, would love your, if you could teach my son guitar, basically, and just please, and he was like, all right, I'll think about it for a week. And so he gets back and he's like, all right, like, I've decided I'm going to teach your son guitar. And so he was someone that I mentioned because also really importantly, because he really is the one that got me into performing. So in sixth grade, was the first time I really did an actual gig, and he organized the gig with his adult band. And where I'm from in New York, it was like, I would definitely say there's a strong music community, and had a ton of these fundraiser concerts that a lot of people could get involved in. Not necessarily young kids, but like definitely adults and things like that at the time. And so I did a few of those. I did one in 8th grade. I dressed up as a Beatle, did Day Tripper. I still had, I hadn't hit puberty, but did all that stuff. And then I started taking lessons alongside Mark with this guy, Peter Press, who's a classical guitar player. So like kind of getting a lot of those different genre twists. And like, obviously, like he'd teach me different things that Mark would teach. And every teacher I've had has had different strengths and had different approaches to music. So I think that's really helped me have the versatility to this day. And then ended up forming a few different groups in high school, did Battle of the Bands, did some more fundraiser concerts, recorded an EP my senior year that was for fun, kind of like a power pop kind of sound, did 3 originals. And then I also did 2 Hendrix covers, Purple Haze and Fire. And I also did Jimmy Eat World the Middle. So just released that for fun. Didn't really promote it too much, but then went off to college. And I actually was a music major starting out, but I ended up switching just because it was a lot. But that was where I formed a band called Duck Pond, which is like this, just kind of like covers mostly alternative rock. I know the name is kind of funny, but so basically did that. And then I actually, one of the reasons I went to school was Furman down in South Carolina, was because my guitar teacher, who I'd be taking with, was just off the charts incredible. His name's Steve Watson, big mentor of mine, and he was the one that really introduced me to jazz guitar. And that's something like, I'm not someone that's like playing the charts every day. Like I've always grown up listening to rock music, and that's what that's always been my bread and butter per se. But he's someone that really introduced me to that. And because it was for school, you know, this coursework I was getting graded, like it really motivated me to move that along and really get proficient in it when I was in school. So even though I'm a little rusty now, like I have enough of the tools that I've taken from him that I think it's really helped me overall, kind of even with the songwriting per se, even if it's not coming directly from that. But, you know, a lot of the major seventh chords for guitar players out there, like stuff like that I'll throw in, which definitely has sort of that indie sound, but also jazzy as well. So, yeah, I mean, all that stuff. And, you know, just, I guess, loving performing, definitely owe it to Mark. And then recording was something, you know, in songwriting I didn't really get into until about sophomore year of high school. So it's still fairly new to me. But I think, like, you know, I was born with not necessarily the greatest voice. I do have perfect pitch, but it doesn't help with a good sounding voice. And so that was something, like, I really had to spend a lot of time, like, figuring out how to write songs in my vocal range, because I'm like a baritone, I guess. And so just over time really worked on that. And it's just, as people know, it's just the more you do it, the better you get, and you kind of experiment with what comes out. And then most recently started taking with a vocal teacher that was really helpful in, like, expanding my range per se, and, like, really showing me what is possible with it. So I think everything I mentioned is just kind of come together. And then I do play a little bit of drums, very much self-taught, not that proficient. I played drums on one song on the new album, but it was the easiest song. And the other stuff I just demoed and then had some other guy play on it, or a friend of mine. But yeah, I mean, I play a little drums. I do play some piano, never took it seriously, so I just know some chords. And then I do play a little bit of mandolin and uke, just because if you play guitar, it's a little easy to figure it out, and then bass a little bit as well. So yeah.
Gotcha. That's awesome. There's a lot to dive into there. So let's talk a little bit about the writing process, because you brought that up a little bit ago. You'd mentioned that you didn't start writing until your sophomore year of high school. Why do you think it took? I'm not going to say took that long, because in retrospect, it's not that long of a time considering, you know, but why do you think, as far as your music goes, why do you think you waited until then to start taking an interest in writing?
Yeah, well, I think part of it was just I maybe wasn't as confident at the time to be able to put something out that I was proud of. And you know, I'm someone that, like a lot of people, like in the 21st century that we live in, will record something. You'll think of something in your head, whether it be a guitar riff. And I've been doing that ever since maybe 6th or 7th grade. Like, I'd been recording stuff. At very early on, it was mostly cover stuff, but then eventually it moved on to riffs and things that I was coming up that were more original, that I thought could be something, but I never really knew what to do with it, because I didn't think my voice was strong enough, and I didn't really have the knack of coming up with a melody in my head per se right then and there, and then also pairing that with lyrics that, one, weren't cheesy, and two, like, there was an actual story. Because growing up, fortunately, in like a suburb outside New York City, like, I was fortunate to not have that much hardship in my life, aside from a few things. But, like, other than that, I've been very blessed to have a normal upbringing, and it doesn't necessarily doesn't help in the process of trying to come up with, like, some good lyrics for, like, a sorrow song or like a love song or kind of thing like that. But eventually you just learn to that just kind of comes out, I guess, like, over time, like I said, with practice. But I guess the reason mostly I waited was, yes, one, because wasn't confident with the songwriting at the beginning. My voice wasn't necessarily where it was until maybe a couple years later. Even then, it was still very new. And I started doing, like, chorus even in high school, which helped a little bit. And then, yeah, just, you know, the more I recorded those riffs, and the more I kind of in my head figured out what good progression sounded like. And I think also just listening to more new music, like, just definitely really helped, because I don't know, just like the more exposure, I would say, to other things. And one of my guitar teachers at the time was helping me a little bit with, like, writing lyrics, and he'd sit down with me in a lesson and he'd just be like, you know, what's the first thing that pops in your head? And he would just have me write stuff down, whether it be something that'll be on the final song. And this was actually for the Waves EP I released. So that was sort of like a test experiment at, like, songwriting. I have these three songs. I'm happy with them, but if I look back at them, the lyrics possibly, were a little bit cheesy in some parts, but you know what? It's a great learning experience. And I think from there, it just kind of really helped propel me off. And also just playing a lot of covers. I feel like when you're in a band like that, also it's hard to find the time in high school to really write all these originals. You have to be fully devoted to it. The band has to be fully devoted. And I will admit, a lot of the bands, like, everyone was really into it, but there were a lot of people like that weren't as motivated. So like that was something like I would be the one that I guess tried to kind of bring people together and like be the organizer. And I like to do that in other things too. So like that was something like I would have loved to do more originals by like junior, senior year, but we didn't have the time for it. And also like you're never going to really get to play more than 2 or 3 at like any of these fundraiser gigs. It's probably going to be mostly covers. So I think that's probably what held me back a little bit. So.
Gotcha. You've talked a lot about a lot of the covers that you've played, a lot of covers. What are some of the songs that you would cover? Like, what were some of your favorites?
Yeah, sure. Well, so in high school, I would say we had one of my bands that was the one that I kind of focused the most on, the Waves. We had definitely some like common, just like ones we'd play at most of the gigs. I would say, I don't know if you'll laugh, but it's like we played like All Summer Long, Kid Rock. Like we played Purple Haze was always like one of the last songs we play. We played Danny California, decent bit. What else? We played, A Fire, the one that was on the EP. Both those Hendrix songs. And then Johnny Be Good was one that we played because that was one I could sing at the time really well. Yeah. Even though my voice isn't where it is now, I was still able to sing it in the right key. I'd like lower it from the original recording that Chuck Berry did. But those ones, and then, I mean, we'd throw in some harder rock songs too. Like we'd play Lenny Kravitz, we'd play Meat Puppets, Backwater, we'd play, what else? We played Paramore, Still Into You. I mean, we really ran it around the rotation. Like it wasn't any particular stuff. It was just like, this person likes this song, and like we all voted on it, and we were like, oh, like if enough people want to play it, let's do it. And if it was feasible, like our drummer was awesome, and he's an amazing drummer. But sometimes like he would be like, oh, I don't want to play this or something. And we'd just be like, all right, that's fine. Like I was the one that was like more diplomatic. I'm like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just play what everyone wants to play.
When it comes to cover music, it's really hard to make it a hill to die on when it's, if they're not feeling it, they're not feeling it.
Exactly.
I 100% get it. So, so you went to high school and stuff just outside of New York City. I'm not going to butcher the name of your hometown because I know I will. So we'll just keep it outside of New York City. And then you went off to college. You mentioned it. Where'd you go to undergrad?
Yeah, so I actually went to Furman University, which is down in Greenville, South Carolina, kind of near Clemson. It's in like the upstate part of that area, near the Blue Ridge Mountains. And
you studied music there, or would you study at Furman?
So initially I studied music, but then after the first semester, I was just very much overwhelmed, and I could have stuck with it. Like I did actually fairly well for like a first semester freshman year, but I think part of me was just kind of like, I can be involved in this as a non-major, like, and still get credit and add to the GPA. Like I can do all those things, and I can still get like a lot out of it without being a major and having to do the really intense like coursework per se. Like Furman, like there's a reason like it's hard, obviously, like it's very, very strong music program. One of the things it's known for, but I just felt like the classical theory stuff, like I had already learned a lot from that first semester, and I'm sure I would know a lot more now if I stuck with it. But I just felt like it was a little bit too much for me. And it also meant like I wouldn't have a normal college experience, just because they always said like the music majors at Furman, like you never saw them because they were just in the music building all the time. And I think it just wouldn't have been the right fit for me, I think. And so that's why I decided to switch to communication studies. And some people might be like, oh, it's so much easier. But like for me, it actually fit really well just because on the side of music, I actually do, as I mentioned with marketing at the beginning, I do a lot of like video production stuff. So a lot of the content that I've released in music and for sports, and I had my own like highlight reel company that I formed just to like make extra money, and it was for fun. But that was something like I felt like I could channel really well with the communication studies major, and it was all marketing focused. So I just thought it's the second thing. It's like one of the things I also really enjoy as a passion. So you know, it's like at least it's like I like it, you know, almost as much as the music stuff. So it really worked out.
And it almost goes hand in hand. Like
exactly, yes.
Like you could definitely, like when it comes to music videos, which we'll talk about your new music video here in a little bit. You know, if even though you may not be the one shooting it or producing it, you know how to communicate, and it's like, oh, this is kind of what I'm thinking, you know. And it goes back to a conversation I had last night on the podcast about musicians learning to produce their own music, because like it's all about clarity and communication. So so you went down to Furman to originally study music, and then worked your way over into communications. Was that more of an emphasis on marketing, video product? Where was the emphasis on communications? Because there's so many different
I know, absolutely. It's very much a broader kind of field and study. So I would say it was definitely more on the broad side. It was definitely focusing. I would say there were some classes that were more applied, like that we had a broadcast communication class where we actually got to run a newscast, write the script, practice doing the prompter, stuff like that, writing out like how you write for broadcast, all that stuff, which was, I think, really a good experience. So we did do some applied things. We also took a digital communication class where we created like a website, did blogging, and, you know, created some videos for that. So like for me, that was like, I was thriving in that class just because that was something like I had done a lot of, and, you know, I was very comfortable in like the Apple movie softwares like iMovie, Final Cut Pro. I do a little in Premiere, but like mostly those two. So that was all really applied stuff. And I love that probably the most, I think, just because anything applied for me, I enjoy. So the theoretical stuff was still great, but I would say like, I still learned a lot from that, but I just didn't enjoy that as much. But that would have been stuff like, you know, like mass media research methods, or, I mean, I took a sports spectacle mass media class my senior year. Trying to think what else I took. The 4 requirements were public speaking freshman year. You had to complete these 4 courses before you could take certain classes. So it would have been public speaking. What else?
I made sure I took my public speaking class during summer school. I specifically went to summer school to take my public speaking course, just because during the normal school year, you were in a big lecture hall. Whereas during summer school, you were tucked away in a small classroom, so the class size was a lot smaller. And I'm like, that sounds like a better idea. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it would have been public speaking, rhetoric, which I did abroad, and then mass communication was another one, and then I forget the other. But basically, it was definitely a mixture of both, but I'd say maybe overall slightly more theoretical. But I think recently the communication studies program at Furman's super strong. I love the professors. Everyone's awesome. I still keep in touch with a lot of them, but like, yeah, it's just a good balance, I think, and I definitely recommend it. But
yeah, I got my associates in communications multimedia. So a lot of the classes you're talking about, I took like a multimedia production, audio production. We did a website thing, and then, you know, just a lot of that stuff. And then I ended up transferring to Southern Illinois to get my bachelor's, and that's where I focused more on film production.
Okay.
So I transferred out of communications and went into film production. So
got it.
Yeah. You were talking all the video editing software, and it's like, yep.
Yeah.
I'd still be using Final Cut if they didn't outdate Final Cut 7. So
Yeah.
yeah, but
Very fair.
anyways. So no, that's really awesome. So then you graduated there with your bachelor's, and now you're in grad school at Vanderbilt in Nashville. And it's you were talking a little bit beforehand that it's a 1-year program for marketing.
It is, yeah. It's a 1-year program. It's one of a few different 1-year programs that Vanderbilt offers. There's one in, there's a Master of Finance, there's a Master of Accounting, Master of Marketing, and then of course they have their 2-year MBA program, which tends to be a bit of an older demographic per se, just because a lot of people wait a few years if they're in the field of work, and then they decide to apply, a few years after getting some more experience under their belt. But for me, I actually, given the COVID pandemic, I hate to bring it up, but just that was something that really influenced, just I didn't think I was going to go to grad school senior year before COVID happened. Even this would have been February where people knew about it, but I wasn't on our radar in the US. I was looking at jobs, I was networking a little bit, and I was getting really just ready to kind of go full swing into that. Went to spring break, everything happened, and then I get sent home basically. And that was a period where I just get in my head, I was definitely it was definitely a tough time. I was confused, I think, as most people were, but I waited about a few months, and then I actually had continued doing, I was a contract video editor for a firm in basketball when I was at school. So I continued doing that and I got paid for that. And then I also, my really good friend from home, his family actually runs a music management company. So basically its own publisher. They're both jazz classical musicians. And his dad actually plays piano on one of the songs in the album that we'll talk about. But basically just worked for them as a marketing assistant. Got to do a lot of video content production. Also did some other stuff with copy and copyright. So I feel it's funny because being a musician, I definitely feel I have sort of knowledge on both sides of the spectrum in regards to kind of how things work. Which I think has definitely helped me just being more of a realist in regards to how the industry works. And then, just did that for about a few months. Actually, sorry, I did that for about a year and a half, but then a few months go by and I decided to apply to grad school. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah. And just felt it was a really good time to apply for something like that. And fortunately, I got into Vanderbilt, so everything worked out. So I took about a year off from going right in, but I think it was for the best, and things happen for a reason. So
yeah, for sure. My dad's been trying to get me to go to grad school, but I've been graduated from college for 10 years. So it's I don't really want to go back to school. I'm good. So,
yeah. I'll probably be done after this just because I don't know. That's one of the reasons I love that it was a year program. Not that I don't like school, but it's just 4 years is such a big commitment after going to undergrad for 4 years. I really respect the med students and people like that, just because it's such a grind. And
I had a couple of my roommates went through a med program, and they had 4 years after school, and it's dude, you guys are insane, but
I know
it is what it is. Exactly. So let's transition, talk about your most recent album, and then we'll kind of talk about the music video spawning off of that. Blue Reverb. What's kind of the story behind this album? Just kind of the background on it.
Sure. So as I mentioned just now about, taking off some time after, we were still doing school a little bit. This would have been early to mid 2020. And so, just I've been writing stuff. I was doing stuff with another band, Duck Pond. We had done a session in November. I thought the stuff came out pretty well. It was for this single called The Park. And then after that, the bass player in that band and I, who were roommates, really good friends, thought it'd be fun to do a lo-fi project. And so we actually did that for a few months, and this was before Blue Reverb, the album, and we were just doing stuff like that. I was still kind of mixing around with different side projects. That's on Spotify, so stuff like that, just for fun. And this was at that point during the pandemic. It was just like, I was like recording stuff in Logic. Then if I could see him in person, like we did a couple trips just because we were seniors and we're like, you know, let's make up for this. Like we would have had something to just like kind of have some closure. And so we got together. That time we were at the beach in South Carolina. I had him record some stuff. So we released this album. And then it comes to be like June or so of 2020. And I had released actually a solo song, A Snowball's Chance in Hell, which is on the album. But this was the early version with a drum machine. Like I had someone else mix it. I thought it sounded good, but like I hadn't really done anything with it. And then June comes around and I write Chasing Vampires, which is a song that I also released as a single a few months later with a video that I actually did the editing for. And I had a friend during the pandemic. It's the same guy that I worked at that music company. He filmed it. And one of my good friends, Hugo Robinson, plays drums on that. And so we do that song. And now I definitely feel like that song, even more so than Snowball, was like really what kind of projected me into like this new kind of mindset of songwriting per se. I know it's like weird to say it like that, but if it makes sense, just like that sort of formula of what I was producing at the time and ideas were coming out, that sort of is what led to Blue Reverb in terms of, I guess, whatever I was feeling at the time. I mean, obviously I mentioned I was a little confused, and everybody I'm sure would admit that they weren't feeling their greatest self maybe that year and a half at least. And I just like, you know, I definitely just tried my best to cope with it. And a lot of it was through the music. And I'm lucky to have like a music room in my basement in my house in New York. And so I was able to record a lot of the guitars and stuff down there, the vocal parts. I had the setup, and I would just go down there late night or during the day and just like record. And I love just like layering guitars over and like doing all that stuff and playing the bass. I'm not playing bass on all the songs, but I do play on most of it. And then drums, like I said, I only play one on the one song. But then I also got a lot of session musicians. My producer, who I'll mention later, he had a friend that has a studio with him that plays drums, has kind of that Dave Grohl metronomic sound. And so he plays drums on 7 of the tracks. And then Hugo plays on 2. I play on 1. And then another friend from Furman plays on the other. And then actually my other friend's dad plays drums on Other Way. So getting back to what I guess the story, basically just felt like it was the perfect time to record something, because I feel like, you know, we had all this extra time, and I know musicians couldn't tour. Like the whole landscape of music was different. Still kind of is, but it's gotten back to normal, thankfully. And so I just like, you know, felt like, screw it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, and I'm someone like, if I'm going to do something, like I'm going to put 110% into it. I'm not like Brian Wilson per se about that level of like OCD, but like I'm definitely like borderline like OCD with like how things need to sound. And like if I hear like a little like prickly noise in the master, I'll be like pissed. I'm like, yeah, crap, like I need to go back and fix this. I mean, like at the end of the day, you gotta like be like, you know, it's only as good as like, you know, you can only get something to be so perfect. But basically went back and recorded these songs, had a lot of that influence just from what I was feeling. Some of it has some lyrical meaning, but most of it's like, you know, I made up love songs. And I also just kind of like, some of it was just like feelings of like melancholy and like that sort of stuff. And so I think like Blue, like my original intention for the name, like Blue Reverb is, I guess, like supposed to be sort of like you have the blues kind of thing, like you're not always feeling great. And it's sort of just a representation of how I was feeling during that time period. And I just kind of like the name Blue Reverb. Like I used a 1978 Fender Twin Reverb on a lot of the songs. And so a lot of the songs and the way my producer mixed it has sort of that reverby kind of like rich filled, like warm sound. And so I just thought it was cool to name it that. And then that's why the album cover that I had my artist PR team do, it has that blue filter on it, which I thought kind of looked very cool in 90s. And the text is sort of copying like the Jimmy Eat World Bleed American album cover kind of thing like that. But yeah, I mean, all that stuff, I think just like shaped it. I'm not great with like meaning, but like that's sort of where it came from. And I've always been a music first guy. So like music stuff typically came first, and then I would write the lyrics. Sometimes it's different, but most of the time I'm writing the guitar riff, building off of that, put a drum machine underneath in a Logic session, and I get the tempo right. Usually come up with that on the acoustic and then translate it over to other stuff. But yeah, so.
Nice. You mentioned that you're not into meaning, and I find myself in that same position where I just accidentally make stuff that has meaning, and it's like, oh yeah, I totally meant to do that. That was 100% on purpose.
Yeah, 100%.
So Blue Reverb, how long's it been out now? Because Spotify only gives me a year. It doesn't give me an exact date.
Yeah, so it's actually been out since Wednesday, November 17th. Was the release day for it initially. I was lucky to have a premiere actually with Music Crowns, who did a full day of just like feature article, and then you could listen to the songs, but it wasn't on Spotify until I think midnight of that day. So that was the initial release. And yeah, I mean, I've just been fortunate. Publicity Nation, who set me up with this interview with you, like they've just been doing an amazing job, like getting me press, stuff like that. It's just been really helpful. And I just, it's just great to have it regardless of if it takes me anywhere. It's just fun to do it. It's just cool to kind of have the write-ups and like have people like writing about your music. And it's just a fun process. And I definitely feel like people have enjoyed it, and I've got some great feedback from people. And as an indie artist, as you know, like you just have to do your part to get like, an artist PR company helps a lot with that stuff, but you're the one that kind of really has to get it out to people. And so I spend a lot of time, well, not a lot of time, but a good amount of time, like DMing people on Instagram and just saying, hey, usually I have that pre-written message that I know a lot of people do it, but I'll just be like, hey, how's it going? Like, my name's Carter and this is my new album. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much. Let me know what you think, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, just like do what I can to get it as much exposure as possible. And I think like, it's not, none of the tracks have reached 1,000 streams on any of the tracks yet, but it's like, you gotta be content with it. It's a process. And, it's at the end of the day, it's always like a musical resume for you or for whoever. So just kind of recognizing that, like, you can't be jealous of other people, even if you're like, oh, my stuff's better. Like, you just can't be like that. Yeah. You have to be very optimistic, very respectful of other people, because that's something I do recognize is that there are so many talented musicians out there. And, for whatever reason, like they're doing what you're doing. There's so many people trying to do what you're doing. And so you just have to be, just aware of those things. And everyone can eat, stay in your lane and just thrive, do what you can. And it's just a very fun experience. So, just keep going, keep growing, I guess.
Yeah. And you got to crawl before you can walk. That's always been a motto that I've lived by. So for Blue Reverb, there's 12 songs on there. What kind of went into the song selection process? Did you already have a bunch of songs that you kind of knew that you wanted to put in there, or were you cherry picking, or did you specifically write for this album, or was it kind of a mixture of both?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say it's definitely a mixture of both, because there's 3 songs, I guess 2 songs that were written fairly long before I had initially decided I wanted to do the album. Some of them were just singles I had released. So Music in the 90s, I released March 2020. This would have been right before COVID. And then Other Way, the 3rd track on the album, is actually a song I wrote the summer before that in 2019. And that's about getting rejected on a dating app, which again, it was a made up story. I've gotten rejected on a dating app, but like, it wasn't any particular instance. That's a song that like, I just basically had been saving. I didn't think it was necessarily like album worthy yet. And I was like, oh, that's good. And maybe I was like underrating it, but I just, in my head, I was like, oh, that's good. But like, I don't know, the riff may be not mainstream enough or whatever. And so I held on to it for a long time. then I decided, like, I was already writing songs. And then I think maybe it would have been like early 2021, I brought it back out and I was like, this has a chance to do pretty well. Like, I think it's got potential. Like, let me re-record it, see how it sounds, get a drummer on it. And so I re-recorded it with a ton of the guitar overdubs, added the lead guitar in the verses when I'm not singing, made it a better song just in the recording studio. And I think it definitely came out. So that's a song that I had been holding on to. And then I guess the rest of the process would have been like, I wrote Chasing Vampires. And then from there, I think September, I wrote Best of Two Worlds. And then I wrote Count to 10. And then after that, I don't know the order per se, but
Yeah.
I started, Starlight came to be. And Starlight originally was like a very slow acoustic. It wasn't how it sounds now, the super upbeat kind of poppy sound. Amateur came out of the bass part that like I just was jamming and I put on a drum machine, a loop. I just was like messing around with the bass that night and I had this cool fuzz effect on and I was just like, wow, this actually kind of sounds good. Like maybe this could be a song. And so, yeah, I just like decided to kind of structure it, in like Logic Pro, like not like fake like the performances, but just like I move stuff around a little bit. The solo was like a part in the interlude later on. Sorry, like the just the kind of the bridge section, and then that riff. I just thought that riff stays in the song the entire time, and I just was like, you know what, it sounds good, and I'm gonna keep it. And then the rest of it kind of just formed together. But I would say most of the songs were just kind of right for the album. Right spur of the moment. Like I didn't have any other material saved. I know a lot of people, like maybe people that are kind of more further along in their songwriting career have been doing it for longer than me, like have maybe an excess of songs and have to select. This is an album that I definitely was just writing as I went along. And then the songs that I felt like I could also throw in there just because I was like, oh, like I need another song like this, I think would really fit well to kind of add variety. I would throw that in. But other than that, it was right as you go along, very simultaneous, spur of the moment, like just trust your gut kind of thing. And I feel like that really worked well for me. And, I definitely take pride in the fact that I've heard from a lot of people, my producer says this, like the songs don't all sound the same. And I think I did that on purpose just because a lot of the stuff, like, you're writing at different times. And I kind of had a little bit of an intent there, just like, Best of Two Worlds doesn't sound like Chasing Vampires. And like, I did that on purpose just because I think when you have variety, I think it just kind of shows more of your, not creativity. It's not to say like songs that have similar sounding structures aren't creative and aren't all good sounding on an album. It's just a different approach, which I kind of do on this next record that I've already started writing. But this one, I just enjoyed kind of like having that variety because like it almost keeps people on their toes. And if they don't like one of the songs, it's maybe a higher chance that they'll like the next one because there are so diverse stuff. They might be like, oh, that sounds like this. And then it all kind of comes together to be, sort of like a unified piece of work. So,
yeah. And it also like intentionally or unintentionally, it also kind of showcases some of your musical influences, like just like where you kind of pull from while still having that Carter Brady sound and feel and just kind of being authentically you, but it also showcases the different varieties that you like or the different sounds that you like to experiment with. So that's really cool.
Totally.
Because it's one of those things where it's like, it's interesting when you have an album where like all the songs kind of like run together. That's kind of interesting. But then again, when you can listen to an entire album and not pinpoint one song specifically, it's like, okay, that's maybe not the best way to go. But when you have like definitive beginnings and ends and, it's like, okay, no, this is Starlight. That's music in the 90s, just like, and you can pinpoint what song it is. So that 100%. Definitely plays a little bit better into today's society of streaming and hit singles and all that fun stuff. So
it does.
Let's talk about Starlight specifically because you just released a music video earlier, I guess technically last week. It's Sunday, so I guess
Yeah.
technically last week. So why did you choose that song specifically to put a music video behind it?
Yeah, so that was something too. I think that made it really hard for me to kind of like choose what songs were going to be the songs for the videos because as a lot of people do, they release singles. And this day and age, as we know, like, you know, a lot of people like don't just release these albums anymore because it's harder to get someone to listen to a full album. I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but when I was first initially reaching out to people, like it was tough just because like it's hard to get them to listen to the full thing if they're already busy enough to listen to your one song. So I think like as far as the singles route, like I could have easily done that and waited and kind of had more of like an approach to kind of easing people into it. But I just was so eager to put it out at that point, and I was like just ready to kind of put it all out. And I was like, you know what? Even if it gets me less streams, it's whatever. I felt like it was, you know, going to be an album, and so that's what I did. So basically, with regards to choosing Starlight as to be the video, I'd actually like done a video for, as I mentioned, for Chasing Vampires. And then I did actually do a video before that for Best of Two Worlds. And so this is at that point, I actually had gotten in touch with Alex DeLand, who's another good friend of mine from town in New York. And so he'd gone to film school. He's, you know, very, very professional, has all the equipment. And so we just got together and talked, and we were like, I told him I'd love him if he was interested in doing a video. And he had kind of, you know, shown that interest in me as well. And just like, we were both talking about it and released that song. And then, I don't know, I guess like, you know, we felt like, or I told him, I was like, I'd love to do another video because I was so happy with how Best of Two Worlds had come out. And Best of Two Worlds, I would say, is definitely more on the DIY kind of indie look. We filmed a lot of it in my backyard. I don't know if you had seen it, but basically just like backyard stuff. We did this fake concert at the end of it with my friends and the guy who plays drums on it. And like, I think it came out really good, but like we were looking to do something different. And I just felt like Starlight for this next video, for that music video, I just felt like it was one of the stronger songs. And I think as far as like a music video goes, like I've noticed most people typically, obviously it's like either what they think is the hit or what they consider to be the one that has the most radio potential.
Yeah.
And I would say Starlight, Bring Me Back to You, Chasing Vampires, maybe one or two others have the most potential for that. And I haven't gotten anything on any FM yet, but I've done a little bit of like searching. Yeah. But I just felt like Starlight was one of those songs, and you know, I wanted a video for it. And so basically just got together with him in the summertime. I think this was right after we did the Best of Two Worlds video. So this would have been in like June, July. Ultimately went in. We actually decided to rent out a studio space in New York City. We felt like a more professional look would be the right thing for this. Kind of emulate a performance, and what we thought would be really cool, as you've seen, is like do the cloning effect. And he just had all the tools and the editing skills to make that happen, and just basically shot a shot of me and kept the camera in the same position multiple times. You know, I'd lay down the bass line, and he'd literally lay down tape. He'd be like, you got to stand here, just because the frame, if you want to have that full picture, it has to be a certain way and to fit it all in. And so I did that for bass. I did that for keyboard. I did that for the drums. And, you know, I had to play the drums really quietly because we were in the studio space during the day. It was during the week. And so we didn't bring the full kit, but it was just my kind of like, not like throwaway kit, but like it's the practice kit we have in my music room. I brought in my car to the city that day. Yeah. And then I brought the Rickenbacker in, which I just felt like it would look cool with the look I had worn. So it kind of gave off the Britpop, Oasis, Beatles kind of look with the glasses. And so, yeah, we just did a bunch of takes that day. It took the full day. And he brought in a couple of his friends from film school that like helped with the lighting and suggested things. So kind of took the load off of him, made it easy for him to like kind of do things more efficiently. And then, yeah, just like basically perform the song all the way through a bunch of times. And then that cool shot at the end he actually got because his camera was programmed to move it a certain way. Yeah. And if you do that a couple times, as long as it's the same exact movement, that's why you can get the cloning to work. So you see me looking back at the keyboard and the drummer, he was able to do that. And there was another cool thing he would have done, but it would have cost a lot more money. So I was just let's just stick with this. It's going to turn out. I had full confidence at that point, like just knowing how the Best of Two Worlds video had come out. I was like, I'm sure this video is going to be like amazing. Like I'm not like, I kind of give him a lot of the controls just because I'm like, I'm just so thankful. Like I'm having you make these videos, like, you know, just, and it's funny because being a video editor myself, like I know what it's like, but I also like, is that level of just like complete like professionalism. And it's like, it was definitely, you know, I'm very thankful to have that for the song, and definitely think it came out as good as it could have. So yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Awesome. And it looks like Starlight is doing really well on YouTube, just looking at the views and whatnot. I've had an opportunity to watch it a few times, and you do some really cool and interesting things like you had brought up. And, you know, originally I didn't realize that you had done the cloning effect. I just just in my head, it was like, oh, maybe that's just the rest of the band. Like I wasn't paying close enough attention to like who was in the video. And I was just like, now that you say that, I'm going to go back and watch it. Yeah.
I know a lot of people actually said that too. And there were people on like Instagram joking about it. Like, it's like, you must be like thrilled to have to be like one of three triplets, or, you know, little jokes like that. And just some people like said the same thing. They didn't notice it at first. They were just like, I didn't realize that was you a bunch of times. So it was funny. I mean, like part of that inspiration came from, I don't know if you've seen any of Tame Impala's music videos, but, Kevin Parker did one fairly recently for Why Won't They Talk to Me? And it was a song off of Lonerism. So it's kind of an older song, but he re-recorded it, and it's him in a garage, and it's him basically like, and as you know, he plays on all his records, he produces it. So he did that, and like in my head, I'm like, whoa, maybe we could do something like that too. And obviously it's not as like done like that where it's like, you know, literally like 50 of him, but like enough where like, considering the budget we had, the space we had, and what I was trying to do, you never want to copy people per se. You want it to be your own. I think it definitely worked. And yeah, no, I still think I definitely was glad that we did that. And it makes for a cool video. And like, also I play, other than drums on that song, I play everything else. So I'm playing the synth part. I literally did on my keyboard, on my computer laptop. It was very simple, just a couple notes, but you know, I don't have like all the big sample libraries. So I just like literally used like a Mellotron sound on Logic. And I actually think it sounded pretty good for what it was. And it fit well with the rest of the instrumentation. But yeah, I'm playing guitar, I'm playing bass on that. And for bass, I was really trying to think of sort of like a Motown, kind of like James Jamerson, Brian Wilson kind of like bass line. And it would open the song, and you can hear that when the drums come in after that. And so, yeah, just like using all that stuff. And then the guitar part was what I first had come up with. That was like the original idea with the melody for Starlight. And so all that other stuff was something I had to arrange kind of after the fact. And I just kind of eventually got it all together, wrote that bridge section where it kind of opens up, cymbal crashing a little bit more, kind of a Nirvana. I would like to say like the drums were a little bit more Nirvana, like sounding like kind of the grunginess. The guitars may be slightly like less loud than I would have liked it, but I obviously with my vocal range and like how the mix was, like you just kind of have to like, you know, find that balance, I guess. And at the end of the day, I'm very happy with both the recording and the video.
Nice.
Yeah. So
awesome. So are you planning out another music video, or are you kind of done with as far as music videos for this album?
Yeah, so you asked that. I actually have, and I don't know if I'm crazy for doing this, but because I know most people only have maybe 3 or 4, and these are like mainstream artists that do it.
Yeah.
Even though I'm an indie artist and I've probably put in more money than I should have on music videos, like I've been blowing money from that. But I think at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm going to have this forever, and it's just going to be great to have video for the song. I actually just did 2 more music videos with my buddy Alex in my basement this time because we were sort of cut on time. I was back on break. going back to school in a couple days. We were like, what's the most cost effective, cheap, but also like will look good, like way to do these videos. And I told him like, I want to do a video for Running Out of Time another way. And not that the others I don't want them for, but I was like, we had ideas for those two.
Yeah.
And we're like, let's do green screen. So we decided he has a green screen. He brought it over from his house. Our basement, we have sort of just this like area where you can like set stuff up, almost like its own like studio sort of thing outside of the music room, and just set that up. And, you know, he's very professional even by himself. And like, we just, you know, did that same kind of thing, 2 days of shooting, one for one video, one for the other. One's a little bit more comedic. The other's like maybe a little bit more serious, and just, yeah, experimented with what looked good. And he's still working on those right now. So those will be coming out maybe fairly soon. And then I actually did film a little bit for Amateur in this very room that you see right now. Right before Thanksgiving, I just decided like, why not? Like, I had some free time. I was just messing around, and I just like, I don't even know if it'd be like the right concept, but I just did it because it's like low budget, got to save a little bit of money that way. So I literally filmed it on my phone, but like I got shots of me like literally lying on the bed with glasses, and I put the camera, the tripod that's magnetic, onto the fan above my bed, and kind of had that like over kind of looking whatever like shot. And I did stuff like that. So I haven't had the time to edit that video, but there's definitely a chance at some point like I'll release a video for Amateur as well. Because my producer was like, you got to have a video for that. And I was like, all right, we'll see. I mean, I've already made some videos, but definitely I'm trying to do my best to fit it all in. And then I would say that's probably going to end up being it. I mean, I would love videos for like I Was But Innocent or Count to 10 or Music in the 90s or My Name, but it's just really hard to do it. You can't do a music video for every song. I feel like that'd be insane, but we will see. I mean, My Name was the other one I was thinking about doing, just like a walk. Don't cut any shots, literally just a walk of me, sort of like, if you know the video Bittersweet Symphony, kind of like that. You're just walking. I know there's cuts in that and there's actually a cast, but for me it would just be me walking maybe on the beach or a park or something, because it's a very reflective, ambient, like ethereal kind of sound. And I thought that would be a cool one to do, just because I do really think that's a strong song on the album, even though it's the last one and maybe less people have heard it. But yeah, so I would say that's everything for Blue Reverb. And then before those come out, believe it or not, over the summer I did an acoustic version of Chasing Vampires, which I'm going to call Unplugged. I hope it's not copyrighted from the performances in the 90s, but I'm just going to do it. If they catch me for it, so be it. I'll take it down. But basically, I'm releasing an acoustic version of Vampires, and I actually had my buddy come in to film me while I recorded the takes of it in the studio. So that's coming out. Nice. And I didn't mention this, but as far as additional personnel on Blue Reverb, I actually got this guy, John Cobert, who's a session musician from New York. He's really good friends with my producer. And so it was one of those things, just like happened to be fortunate to like, you know, make the connection. And Joe, my producer, offered it. But believe it or not, he actually was in John Lennon's solo band in the 70s. Oh, wow. And plays synthesizer on Stand By Me, and played in one of his last performances where they did like the heads behind their head kind of like outfit and everything. Yeah. So he's a very, very talented musician and keyboard player. And so I got him to play piano on the Vampires version, the acoustic version. Then he also plays on Running Out of Time and My Name, just doing some background synth and keyboard parts. And then aside from the fact, I actually got Mark White of Spin Doctors to play bass on Vampires and Music in the 90s, who is, you know, like I love Spin Doctors. They're a band that I grew up listening to. The Waves actually covered Two Princes a decent amount, so I know the solo, even though it's not, there's maybe not that many videos on how to play it, but like I just did some digging and really loved that band, and you know, got to see them when I was really little. So I've had that connection, and he followed me. Mark actually followed me in November 2020 out of the blue, and I was like, no way, this is amazing, like let's go. Yeah. So I reached out to him, and I was just like very normal, like, hey, it's Carter, like, you know, nice to meet you, like would love to talk music sometime. And we just kind of started conversation, and eventually I was like, hey, was wondering if you wanted to play bass on this song. And It was vampires at the time, or no, music in the 90s first. And then he was like, sure, I'd love to. And he played on it and sent me back the Logic session. He's living like in the West Coast, but we obviously with COVID could make it work. And so having both of those guys on the album, and then Antonio Chaka, who's a jazz piano player, my friend's dad, plays on amateur that piano solo at the end. I just was really fortunate to have a bunch of people be on it. You know, a lot of these people are very, just like well-known and acclimated in the industry and very talented people. And the singer from The Waves sings backing on Best of Two Worlds. And she literally sent me a voice memo recording of that, and I sank it up myself, basically, synced it up myself, and just like, used whatever she gave me, because she's very busy. She's in nursing, and so I was just like I felt like it could be cool to have female vocals on that. So I was like glad I got it, and then I just did my best to sync it up and like do what I could with it, and I think it turned out great. And I think that's pretty much everybody else. I mentioned the drummers obviously play on it. My friend's dad plays on Other Way. He's not in the video, but like he did a live performance with me over the break. I performed at a local restaurant and did mostly acoustic stuff, but had him come up and play some tambourine. And so it's just been really cool to kind of, even though I'm a solo artist and this album was mostly me writing everything, it was cool to get some of that personnel to kind of spice things up, because everyone brings something different to the table. Yeah,
absolutely. That's always cool when you're able to bring in your friends and people you've looked up to for a while, and kind of come in and help you out with the project. So just really quickly to jump over to, you teased that you're working on the next album already.
Yes.
What is it you can tell? What can you tell us about it? And, obviously not giving anything away that you don't want to give away, but what can you tell us about that album?
Sure. So I actually was on, trying to remember what I was on. I was on this other video cast fairly recently, a couple days ago, and I did mention the name of the album, so I guess I can say that. I don't know if it's set in stone, but I'm someone that I like to plan things ahead, and sometimes to the point where it's like I don't even have like the full album done, and I'm like already making the album cover and the name, and it's like, dude, like you haven't even finished the album. Like some artists might be like, what are you doing? But like in my head, I'm just like, I'm like marketing first kind of like mindset. And so like having the content, it's like that's already half the battle. And it's like I feel like it's been good for me to kind of have that. But so the album name as of now, I'm going to name it Nostalgia Spins. And I think part of that is because a lot of the songs kind of represent like a nostalgic kind of feel. And Spins just because like I feel like retro's really in right now. And like the album cover is basically, I did 10 short run vinyls for Chasing Vampires from this Canadian lathe cut vinyl company. So it's not like the mainstream like material vinyl, but it still, sounds good for what it is. And it wasn't too much money. So I actually got just a screenshot picture of the vinyl, and it's just like a picture of me with glasses on. And then the same Publicity Nation like design team did that album cover with the same font. So I almost feel like it's cool to have like that unity and sort of like continuity of like, it's new, but it's like leading off of like those same ideas from Blue Reverb. And so it has like, instead of like the blue like framing, it's got like, I'm colorblind, but it's got like I don't want to say the wrong color, but like, it's got a different color there. And so, like I actually have recorded the 12 songs. I did it all in my Nashville bedroom that I'm in right now. Literally while I was in Vanderbilt first semester, just found time, sort of like I did with Blue Reverb, only maybe had slightly less time just because I'm more involved in school, obviously. And so I was smart about it, but like sometimes late night I would just like come out and play guitar, or even in a break or something during the day. And so I started recording that probably in like August. Actually, no, there's a song in July that I recorded at my house in New York. That was the very first one I did. Everything else is just here. And I don't know necessarily like if it's all different, but I would say like, I think to an extent where you are is sort of like it influences kind of how stuff comes out and what you produce. And so I would say like most of these songs, I was going for like maybe a different approach to like length of the songs. Like some songs are still longer, but I just felt like it's cool to do different things on different albums. And so I decided to try to make some of the songs a lot shorter. And so a lot of the songs are sort of like almost like early Beatles length. They're like 2 to 2:30. And I just was like, you know what, like try it out, see what happens. And like, I did that on a lot of the songs, and some of them are a little longer, but they all kind of have that nostalgic kind of sound. So it's I would say this album is different than Blue Reverb in that it has a lot more connection. The songs all sound a lot more similar to each other overall. Some of the progressions are actually fairly similar, and they're just like variations. And so I would say like Mac DeMarco or someone like that, like it doesn't sound like that per se, but it's got like some of those ideas, and his songs are also really short too. And so I kind of was going for a lot of that. And, so I have two roommates, can't always be loud and blaring out vocal tracks. Like some of the songs are just naturally quieter because I was like, late night, I have to record softer.
Yeah.
And so that's just the way it came out, and I was happy with it after the fact. I would definitely just say like shorter songs, more of a nostalgic kind of feel. The songs are more unified. Some are a little bit more soft rock than others. But I would say it's got like kind of everything on there, and I'm definitely equally proud of it. Excited to get working on it. I haven't sent my producer any of the songs yet, other than one, which I might release as a single later in the spring.
Nice.
So we'll see what happens with it, but definitely excited to keep releasing as much as I can. So
sweet. Can't wait to hear more about it, or hear more of it, not about it. I'm really looking forward to that. So if anybody wants to check out the Blue Reverb, the music video, anything that you got going on, where's the best place for them to do that?
Sure. So social media, I do have a link tree where people can access through the hyperlink a bunch of different things, like different sites. And I was given a hyperlink at the very beginning, like that has access to all the platforms. But I would say just go check it out on Spotify first and foremost, if you have a Spotify, just because like I feel like that's the place I could definitely like use the support the most, because that's where the streams will show up, and getting me the fans also like to show up, like the Carter Brady radio, stuff like that. That like I don't need to have, but I feel like it's just like cool milestones to have that page kind of grow a little bit more. So definitely check it out on Spotify. Make sure to like it, add it to your playlists. And then, YouTube, if you could go subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be awesome. The Starlight video is actually on Vivo right now, on my Carter Brady Vivo channel. But I have an artist official channel. They merge when you release 3 videos on Vivo. But in the meantime, go subscribe to either one or both. Like the video. Just share that around too. I would love you to do what you can to kind of help me out and kind of share it, because I feel like it starts with the fans, and like, as much as you guys can do and have time for it, would really appreciate any sort of help you could give me. And definitely love to hear your guys' feedback on anything. Like, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm always open to hearing people's, it could be positive or negative or in between or whatever. Just open to anybody's feedback. Just really great to hear that. And hope you guys check it out. Really, really excited for you to hear it.
Awesome. And then are you actively playing live gigs right now, or were you kind of on the live show, in-person show spectrum?
Yeah. So in Nashville, obviously, as you can imagine, there's a lot of opportunities to get involved. Back in August, I did perform on Broadway at Tootsie's. I only did 3 songs because it was my friend's band who invited me to come up. It was a Sunday afternoon. I'd done my work, and he called me up. He's like, "Carter, you want to come up and play some songs?" I was like, "Sure, let's do it." And so for me, this was big because like I never performed on Broadway, and it's just kind of cool to say you have.
Yeah.
I haven't performed on Broadway since, just because I've been busy, and also like I can't necessarily just do the come up for 3 songs thing every time per se, because I don't have a group down here, but. A lot of the members in Duck Pond like live kind of nearby, so like we have been in talks of like getting them to come up for a weekend and like perform if the gig's already set in stone. So I just need to reach out to more local venues, but I'm in a band in grad school that like I'm managing, and so it's like we are going to be playing at like some like closing bells, which like are just like Thursday like happy hour get-togethers.
Yeah.
That I'm going to be doing like maybe a few months from now. Just like we still have to prepare for it. But I've got that to look forward to, and then someone in that band actually knows is a booking agent basically that could get me like hooked up with some people in like some different, maybe not on Broadway, but like some off Broadway venues. So that's something like even within the next few weeks that I want to like try to kind of get going. And like, so it's sort of like, I haven't performed anywhere like myself yet in Nashville, but I mentioned I did the gig basically a month ago in New York. So I did that because I know the owner of the restaurant. But aside from that, I haven't done anything crazy, because as much as I'd love to teach like 4 other people like my album and then go play it, one, it's hard to find a venue where like everybody's gonna want to listen to your full album, and also like it's just like takes a lot of time to teach everybody those parts and figure it out, and you know whether or not you pay them or not. So it's like all those things. I would love to do it and exercise that ability, but at the moment I'm probably just going to be solo, and maybe the Duck Pond guys can come up for a weekend. And my drummer's all for learning the albums, like he would do that. And then I hopefully get the bass player to do it as well. So yeah, just like it's still kind of like in the works, but definitely like definitely expect to do like a solo acoustic gig in the near future. So
awesome. That's got to be really exciting. So
yeah, for sure.
But I do want to take a moment and thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blast sitting here chatting with you. Hit everybody with the social media handles one more time.
Yeah, sure thing. So Instagram is Carter Brady Music. Facebook, I think, is the same thing. TikTok, same thing, Carter Brady Music. YouTube, you can just look up my name and it should come up. And then yeah, just Spotify, same thing, Apple Music, all the streaming platforms. It's just my name, Carter Brady. And then I don't think I'm forgetting anything, but if there is anything else, I mean, those are the main platforms. Definitely would love you guys to follow me, subscribe, you know, all the above. Would really appreciate it. So
awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me for a little bit. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you all later.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. Really appreciate it.